Hey guys, before we get started, we want to shout out all of our awesome partners, including Hicks Chicks, Gregg Vet, and all of the awesome partners that you see on the screen right now. Make sure to do business with them, and we hope you enjoy the show. Hey guys, Ronnie Calhoun here with Miss Lou Champion Spotlight, and we are not in the studio today. We're actually filming live here at our awesome partners, Hampton Inn and Suites, right here downtown Natchez. And I've got a guy, Mr. Brad Meshell. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Trying to think of how to introduce you. So Ryan Richardson, a mutual friend, lives here in Natchez. She called me and said, "Hey, I've got this guy that I really want you to hook up with. Really want you to meet. I think y'all hit it off." And she told me about Jacob's Audible, which we'll get into in a little bit, in your story with autism and all of that. And I work with a lot of kids with the same diagnosis. And so me and you talked on the phone for about an hour one day, and we knew that we were going to hit it off. So we'll get into all that, but I appreciate you being here.
I appreciate you.
I guess let's start out. Just tell me a little bit about yourself. Let's start there.
Okay. So I was born and raised in New Orleans, Louisiana. I've lost my accent over the years. High school, college, and then I moved on to the corporate world and restaurants, Cheesecake Factory.
Yeah.
Traveled around the country, opened 30 stores.
Wow.
A course of 10 years. So that's where my accent, I lost it. So because I spoke a lot in front of, hundreds of people. So they were like, you can't ask nobody nothing, kind of deal. So
I'm sure it comes back when you visit.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I got on the phone with you and it came back a little bit. And so it took me around the country, and then I finally landed in San Diego when I was done, and did some consulting out there. But
okay.
I went to settle down. I was in my 30s now, and I went to settle down and decided I need to buy a house and maybe settle down. But I realized I didn't have enough money to buy a house in San Diego. So I was like, all right, that's out. So I started looking at, and I always loved, I'd been in Nashville once before, long time ago. It's not the Nashville it was, or it is today.
Yeah, that's right.
But I love country music, and it was an up-and-coming city. I did a little bit of homework, but the cost of living was good. So I moved. Was good, yeah. And and I actually got there 2017, right before the bubble, right, or the blast of people coming in. And so I moved there, didn't know a soul, but got there, got a consulting gig, and it was in a little small restaurant. And the story starts from there. That's where I met my wife, and then and everything goes from there.
What's her name?
Her name is Jamie.
Jamie?
Jaime. Okay. Yeah, I always tell people that.
Yeah. The fancy.
Yeah. Her name's Jamie. She's born and raised in Nashville, so she's Southern Belle. She's got a great accent, and she used to come in the restaurant casually, but more often than not. And I remember the first time, she's 5'9". Okay. So when she walked, I'm 5'9". So, but when she walked in, you can't miss her. And so I saw her a few times, and then she started coming in during the slow periods after lunch, and I would notice her, on a computer doing. She was kind of working from home before working from home was a thing. Her mom had cancer, so her job allowed her to work remotely, so she could bring her mom to her appointments. Well, she spent that time at the diner. And we started talking, so it was kind of like we were dating before we were dating. And it's a great love story. She asked me out a few times. I told her no, because I really was trying to work on myself. I was really trying to establish myself, get a house, land a few more contracts and things like that. So I didn't want that distraction, right? Yeah. I was like, no, because I can't give can't give myself to you right now. But we continued on, and she didn't give up. So and that's very unique. It's usually the other way around. Yeah. And then we finally started dating a little bit, and just fell in love, and then got a house, started having kids, and and here we are.
And how many children?
So I have a stepdaughter who's 17. So Jamie had a daughter prior to me. Okay. And I have Jacob, who is autistic, and he's 5. Okay. And then I have Jackson, he's 2.5, and he is feral. Okay. Yeah, he's like Johnny Knoxville. Yeah, he's off the charts. He's tested. We had him tested when he was younger, and he's tested non-autistic. Okay. So there's always a big chance that if you have one autistic child, you'll have another. Okay. The statistics are very high. It's like 2/3, which we were nervous about when we made that decision, but we also wanted Jacob to grow up with a sibling. Yeah. That was my goal because we're older parents. Mm-hmm. So when Jacob's 25, I'll be 65.
Yeah.
So we wanted to have a sibling for him to grow up with, to live a longer, or we're not going to live much, past that point.
Yeah, it's good planning ahead.
To have siblings, I think, as your parents grow old and maybe pass away, the siblings kind of get closer at that point. So that's kind of what we were hoping for, to have someone go along with him on his autism journey.
Yeah.
Once, I hope I'm sticking around for a little while.
We'll
see. Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, man. So let's kind of dive into that. I purposely didn't do a ton of research into Jacob's Audible because I know some of the story, but I kind of wanted to hear it just like our viewers are hearing it for the first time. So let's kind of talk about, before we get into the charity part and why you're here in Natchez for the walk and everything, let's kind of talk about when Jacob was born. Let's talk about that story and how you went through it and all of that.
Yeah. So before I moved to Nashville, I was 40 years old. So I never thought, being a single guy all those years, I never thought that marriage or kids would be in my future. I'd always been a single guy, and I think that's why when Jamie asked me out, I was like, I don't know, but so I never saw myself with children. But as Jamie and I grew and fell more in love, and her having an older child, I remember having a conversation with her.
Yeah.
If she was willing to have another child. And she was like, absolutely. And so we got pregnant right away, which is always great. And through the pregnancy, I felt myself just changing as a person. Like I never had to care for someone else, other than your wife. And going through that experience, I never missed an ultrasound. I never missed an appointment at all. I was there from the beginning. It was that big of a deal to me, because for someone that never thought he would experience it, to be given to that, and I thank the Lord for that, because he brought me in a direction to have those gifts that I thought I would never receive. And going through that whole process and just the ultrasounds and the heartbeat and watching him grow, and it was breathtaking for me. But was there at the birth. It was a induced birth. So it was like 9 hours. I'm sitting by the heart machine just watching it. I got tons of video of it, but he finally came, and it was the best day of my life, at that point. And we took him home, and from then on, I'm a very hands-on dad, very hands-on, like diapers, baths, all that stuff. I pride myself on it. I think it helps me become a better man when you get involved in the intimate parts of your children. So when he was born, everything was good. Checked out all the preliminary tests that they do, hearing, sight, and all that stuff is good. Genetic tests were fine. We did that early in the pregnancy. But right around 6 months or so, Jamie noticed that Jacob, during diaper changes, wasn't looking at us. He wasn't paying attention to us. He was kind of looking off to the left, looking off to the right. And I had never had a child. So I was like, well, that's just Jacob. I don't know. She's like, no, he should be looking at us. I'm like, I don't know. It's Jacob. No, don't worry about it. He'll be fine. And then we continued on 6 months to a year, and those milestones start coming in, right? My wife's very keen on that stuff. Like, she knows everything up to the week, up to the day where he should have 5 words, 10 words, and all that other stuff. Dads don't really, he talks when he talks.
He'll be fine.
Yeah, he'll be fine, right? And and I said that 1,000 times. And when we got to that year mark, it was, should have 20 words. He had 3. Started seeing a little bit different behavior. He was kind of clumsy, so to speak. He started walking right away, but just his peripheral vision a little bit, I think. He'd run into stuff, and just so I kind of kept a close eye on him. We kind of patted the house, in different ways. And Jamie's like, she's like, I'm really unsure about, Jacob. So, and then as that continued on, it made me, one, concerned, but it also made me angry, because I didn't want to believe it. Wasn't not my kid, right?
Yeah.
We all say that, no, not my son. And because he was the legacy, and that's the way I always thought of him was, he's my legacy. He's gonna play football. He's gonna date cheerleaders. He's gonna do everything I did, right? Yeah. And when you start seeing a little bit, differences in it, but I always
and you didn't know how to process that emotion.
I had no idea, no idea. And so when I got to the 1.5 year mark, Jamie pulled me aside and said, "Listen, I know you don't want to believe this. You keep saying that's just Jacob, but he needs to get tested. He needs to be in maybe some therapies or something like that because he's not talking the way he should. He, some different things. Like I said, kind of clumsy, not really using his hands the way he did. He didn't play with toys the way a year, a 1.5 years he should be playing with toys. He kind of he wasn't interested. So that was a concern. And when I promised her at that 18-month mark, I said, okay, at 2 years old, if he's not hitting the milestones, we'll start therapy. Autism, furthest thing from her mind. She never said the word. She never said it. But she was like, he may need some therapy. So in my mind, I'm like, all right, yeah, I was a little slow, right? Yeah, that's why, I mean, and so I'm like, maybe he just needs help in, with that. So we didn't have therapies when I was younger. Right? I just had to tough it out, right? And so at 2 years old, still not making those milestones, not getting where he needs to be. So we started some therapies, some, occupational therapy, some speech therapy, and we started having people come to the house. We take him different locations. And it must have been about 2 or 3 weeks into that, one of the therapists said, have you ever thought about getting him diagnosed for autism? And she said it to Jamie. And then Jamie came to me and said, this is what she said. And at that point, it's a gut punch, right? That sinking feeling in your stomach. And it's like a phone call you get.
So you were blindsided by the word, or like, were you in denial that it was autism, or were you prepared for it, or completely blindsided?
The word, the stigma behind the word, and I'll talk more about that later because of the ignorance that I had. I saw the movie Rain Man. Yeah. And that was it. That was my knowledge that, okay, that's autism. Yeah. Right. But the stigma of the word, because when you tell someone your child has autism, your brain and your mind goes, far right. Right. It's like negative, death sentence, something's wrong with them, mentally disabled. You start going way off. And so when she said that, I started, with that just sinking feeling. But then I started researching it. I said, okay. So I'm like, I still didn't believe it. I was like, no, he's going to be all right, because he's, and people say this all the time, but he doesn't look autistic. And that's what I said when I was, at this point, I was like, well, he looks fine, good looking kids, but you start digging into the research and top 10 things that characteristic of a child that may have autism. And Jacob had 8, right? So when you start looking at this and you start reading it, so when I get to an article, I didn't believe it, I'd go to the next article and go to the next. Well, now he's down to 6 out of 10, right? Yeah. And so just playing a mental game with myself of denial. And it was tormenting me. And then you go into that 2.5 year mark, and it was the summer before he turned 3. And we got a diagnosis opportunity in Vanderbilt, which is very rare. We got it as quick as we did. It's usually a huge wait list for these things.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Oh yeah. That's, like I said, that'll probably be another conversation with us. There's such a backlog on diagnosis for several reasons, but a lot of it is lack of resources, a lack of people that are qualified to do
even at Vanderbilt, one of the top,
right? Even at Vanderbilt, because so many people in the Middle Tennessee. If you get out of Nashville, you get into rural areas, and those rural areas don't have any resources, and so they have to come to Nashville. Mm-hmm. So Vanderbilt's serving not just Nashville; they're serving the surrounding areas. So it gets very congested, very backlogged, because there's only certain people with certain degrees can diagnose. They're opening the doors for other. They're going to make it more accessible going in the future, because they're seeing the need for a quicker diagnosis, because some people wait 6 months, 9 months. And if you wait 9 months for a diagnosis, that means you wait 9 months for therapies or resources, where the government will step in and pay for it, or you'll have insurance pick things up, but not until you get that diagnosis. So when a kiddo is 2 and has to wait till 3, that's a big year to miss out on therapy. Exactly. The brain is still, what I refer to it as, it's still mushy. It's still moldable at those younger ages. So that's why we really advocate for early intervention. Don't do what I did, right? Don't do the denial thing. But so we got into a diagnosis and basically just walk in this room and they just play with him, give him some toys, this and that. And just, they watch him for like 20 minutes. And she's like, okay. She's like, I'll have a full report for you in 2 weeks. And I looked at her and I said, that's not going to work for me. I said, and she goes, well, that's the way we got to do it. I go, all right, come on, tell me, what do you think? This is me talking to the psychiatrist. And my wife's like, come on, let's go. I said, no. I want to know what she thinks. Yeah. And she nodded her head. And that was enough. So we walked out, and I remember going down to the garage and putting Jacob in the car seat, and I cried. I mean, I cried for, I think, 30 minutes. And Jamie had to end up driving, and I can't, if I could describe it, I would, but it's like, it's almost making, I'm going back to that moment right now. And it's so from that point on, that's where the story begins. Okay. Even though it doesn't begin there, that's where things get interesting after that part. So
So man, that's pretty touching right there. So what happened? Like, what happened after that? You got the official diagnosis.
Right. So 2 weeks. Yeah. So 2 weeks later. 2 weeks later. So this is what's incredible about the story. So that's mid-August or so, and then Jackson, my youngest son, is born August 30th, and then we get his diagnosis September 13th. Okay. So you're talking about going from one of the highest highs to the lowest of lows. Yeah. Even though I knew. Yeah. She already gave me the nod. Yeah. But you don't believe it until you see it, right? And it's almost like a bad dream, or they're gonna come back and be like, oh no, he's okay, right? Yeah. And there's always a chance. But having Jackson being born and then having Jacob diagnosed, it was so, I mean, it was something that I can't explain, because I couldn't and I didn't know how to handle it. And I'm an upbeat guy. I'm half, glass is not half full, it's full. Yeah. High energy, always looking at the positive, always faithful, spiritually led. It's going to be okay. But when I got that diagnosis, I changed. I was not the same man. I went into a darkness. I went into a deep depression. I was angry. I think at everyone. I thought, me and God, we had it out for a while. Yeah. We were talking back and forth for a while, because I started blaming myself. This is because of what I did. This is something I did in my past. And why did you do it to him? Give it to me type of conversations. But I wasn't the same man from September, October, November, and it lingered. And my wife noticed it. But because of now, once you get diagnosis, you start running into this, got to get him in this therapy, got to get him in this therapy, got to get insurance to cover it, got to get it. I mean, it is a whirlwind of paperwork and phone calls and other stuff. And I'm so blessed to have Jamie, who is a compensation accountant, got a background in HR. She's good at paperwork. I'm not, right? I'm not that guy. Yeah. And so to have her come in and step in, and I tell this to everyone, she was the stronger person. I don't know if I was on my own, I'm sure I would have stepped up, but not in the way that she did. And I mean, it affected our marriage. It affected our house. And I'm trying to celebrate. Right. Oh yeah, I'm celebrating a new child, but I'm still now it goes into new child, Jacob's diagnosis. Now I'm eyeballing Jackson for every single move he makes, everything he does. I am zoned in on it. Because
were you aware? Because I didn't realize that until you said that earlier about the higher percent chance of siblings.
We did because we when we decided to have Jackson, the conversation once again had come up about autism, but it was before we knew. It was before I was really accepting it. Yeah. But we agreed to have another child, and I said no. I said, and that's Jacob's going to be fine. Yeah. Let's have Jack. Yeah. And hopefully, everything would work out, because you had to, it was 9 months before. So I really wasn't convinced yet, totally. So that was part of me wanting to just move forward and say, no, I want, even without the diagnosis, I still wanted, because there's such a big gap between Jacob and Jalen, his oldest sister. So she'll be in her 30s when he's a teen. So there's going to be a gap there. Yeah. So I still wanted him to have a sibling. I think it's important to grow up with siblings, just for any reason. And especially now that they're both boys. Yeah. I think that's great. Yeah. But to go back and forth, staring at him, understanding that there could be a chance, right? And then that's when I really dug into it. Like you said, I kind of knew there was a chance, but then I wasn't believing that Jacob was autistic. But then as you got to that now, it's like, all right, but he's already been, he's already entered the world. So I'm watching Jackson. I'm watching every move. And then we actually got into a clinical study at University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill, where they wanted to, and this was through they let us know that, hey, you can do this. So they don't want to test Jacob. They want to test the sibling of an autistic child. And it's really, really unique. And it's something that needs to be funded more. So basically, they took Jackson at 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, and 2 years. And what they do is you go there and they evaluate him just like they would an autistic child. But then they do these things where they hook him up to a scan, and they almost give him like a MRI of the brain. It's one of those things you put on, one of those caps, and they watch all the, all your wires and how everything's going. And then they do some vision testing and things like that. So, and the point of the study is this, is at 6 months, a year, year and a half, and 2 years, if Jackson would end up autistic, then they can go back and look at what his brain looked like at 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. So in the future, when parents see something at 6 months and they're concerned, they can scan that child's brain and say, well, his brain looks like this brain that was autistic, so maybe we should start therapies now. And that early intervention can be key, because once again, the brain is still molding at that point. So if you get diagnosed at 6 months or a year versus 3 years old or 5 years old, then you're way ahead of the curve as far as the ability to maybe manage the brain to, kind of take a turn the best you can, right? Yeah. I mean, it's complicated. I still don't fully understand it. I don't think anyone really understands it. But if you could start just kind of molding the brain into a typical learning or a typical speech pattern or whatever it is, it just gives that child a better chance of developing and being able to live in a typical world. That's interesting too. So I wouldn't have. I'm learning a lot already. I'm sure the viewers are. I work with a lot of diagnosed with autism, and I've learned a lot already so far in this interview. But so at this point, and I don't want to skip ahead, but so at this point, you kind of got knocked off the saddle a little bit. When did you start to turn around and put it all together and say, all right, it's time to, how did you get from where you were then to kind of developing the beginning stages of where you are today with everything that you're doing? So that September, October. Did we miss anything in there? No, okay, that's perfect, because it's gonna lead in. Okay. So that September, Jackson born August, September, he gets diagnosed. So it was September, October, November, almost into Christmas. And I remember just being in complete darkness and not being the person that I used to be. But it was something about when Jacob was going to turn 3. He's born 12/19/18. So it was December 19th. There was something about his 3rd birthday. And when we celebrated his birthday, and you get into that, I don't know, it's a different feeling, right? When you go to, celebrate your child's birthday. And I started looking at him, and I tried so much to pray my way to a better place, and I just couldn't get there. But something, when I looked at him, when, as he was turning 3, I saw something, and I saw something spiritually that said, what are you doing? Right? This is your son. He's Jacob. He's not Jacob, the autistic kid. He's Jacob. And you have to step up and be his father and love him and care for him just like any other typical father would. And I just kind of beat my hand on the table, and I said, it's time to go. Like it's time to make, start being a father again. And he needs me. Right. And it's just like, and it just snapped. I mean, I big faithful. I mean, I think it was spiritual. Yeah. There was something there.
So there was like a particular moment for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, it was during his, we had like a birthday weekend type deal, and we celebrated his birthday, and I looked over, I'm like, he's Jacob. Yeah. You know what I mean? He's laughing, he's giggling, he's eating the cake, and just, I was like, and I kind of snapped out of it. And so as I started to get involved with my wife, and started to dig in a little bit, my brain started brainstorming, right? Going back to the old Brad, right? And I started thinking, I'm like, how can I impact Jacob's life, and how can I make a difference? Because you start getting into this autism community, you start realizing, one, how big it is, right? Yeah. Two, how complicated things are. And as you start meeting other families and you start hearing these stories, one, you start realizing you're not alone. Okay. It's not unique. And also what the toll is on a family and on the child. and I'm like, and I prayed and I said, what do you want? What do you want me to do? And it's so great because I reference this all the time. I thought God took him away from me, but he didn't. Nothing was taken away from me. It was given to me. And just like any child is, but it was God's plan to not only give me Jacob, but also give me the opportunity to help other people. Yeah. And that's what he does. Yeah, right. So he smiled and said, listen, I know what I'm doing. Yeah. You're not just, get out of the way because I'm going to use you because you're going to help other people. Yeah. And you're going to have an impact on other people. And when I started to realize that and the opportunities that were there, because what we went through, and my wife was talking as we got into the community, was there's no way that people can do this alone. There's no way that, because we had support, two-person family. We had my older daughter, my mom. So my mom, when Jacob was diagnosed, was still in Slidell. Yeah. Okay. And she moved up there to help us. She moved in with us to help care for Jacob, because I called her and I said, I tried to get her to move up there several times. Yeah. But at that moment, she was like, I'll come help you. Because I told her, I was like, I'm lost. I don't know what to do. We need another set of hands because it's a different situation. And then Jack came along, so it's like, we need about nine more hands. But we had family support, we had a friend support, and that's not the norm. And I started realizing that. I'm like, how do people do this? Because like I said, Jamie is very knowledgeable. Insurance, paperwork, resources. I didn't know anything, and I'm sure that's the norm. For people.
She was probably the outlier.
She was. Without her, and so what we decided to do, and I started thinking, was I went to bed, and I remember I woke up and I said, Jamie, I think we need to uplift Jacob and uplift his name, and because I want him to be proud of me. Yeah. And that was one of my biggest concerns or disappointments was he's never going to know how much I love him or what I'm willing to do for him. And I just want him to be proud of me. Yeah. And so when I went to bed, I started brainstorming. I was like, you know what I could do? I can help other people and lift Jacob's name and start a nonprofit. And my wife's like, okay, well, it's a lot of work and things like that. And she's like, you need to do some research, right? So I said, okay. So I started
probably thinking he'll
let it go, right? Yeah. Start digging a little bit. Called Autism Tennessee, which is the big nonprofit in Nashville, and they were very discouraging. They're like, oh, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. So, but that's never fazed me. Yeah. I mean, I tell people when they tell me about, is it a lot of work? I go, being autistic is a lot of work. Yeah. This is easy compared to what Jacob and other kids have to go through and other parents. Mm-hmm. And so, but when I realized is with nonprofits, I'm like, you need money. I forgot that part. I'm like, wait a minute. To do the program, I'm like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. But not realizing that we needed to raise money to do all these programmings. And I knew I was willing to self-fund, definitely in the beginning. Mm-hmm. But so I said, okay, what can I do as a big fundraiser to really kick off Jacob's Audible as an organization? But also, obscurity is always the biggest mountain to climb in a new business, any business, right? Nonprofit or anything else. And so what can I do to really make a splash to let people know we're here and what we want to do and how to do it? And also raise, obviously raise funds to for the programming. So I started looking and, okay, what can I do? What's a big splash? I was like, all right, I can walk across America. I'm like, nope, can't do that. I was like, all right, I can climb Mount Everest. Nope, can't do that. Yeah. And so you start going through all these different things, and I'm like, I can't do that. Because I didn't want to just have like a weekend event or something. I wanted to do something significant. And because I wanted to show Jacob who his dad was and how proud I was to be his dad, but also I wanted him to be proud of me. And so during COVID, we drove the Natchez Trace. It ends a mile from my house. Oh, yeah. It's the coolest thing right there in Bellevue.
I've been there many times.
Yeah.
Every mile of the trace.
Which I think is, once again, another alignment spiritually. Mm-hmm. And so we drove that during COVID to get out the house. And we would just get in the van and go, right? Because we got to get everybody out. So we just got in the van and went.
And get you a biscuit right there. Yeah, Loveless.
Yeah, well, they weren't open at that point. This is like deep COVID, right? Deep COVID, and so I think McDonald's opened at one point. Yeah. Drive-through, and we used to go get fries and drinks and then go drive. So that was my only exposure to it. I didn't know what, before I moved to Nashville. I had no idea what the Natchez Trace was. Didn't know where it started. Didn't know it was that long. But I remembered that, and I was like, and I looked it up. I'm like, let's see. And I started doing math. I'm like, all right, starts in Natchez, come back up. And I started doing research. Has anybody ever walked it? Right? I know people bicycle it. Mm-hmm. And one person walked it in 2016. Her name was Andra Watkins, New York Times bestselling author, incredible person. And I reached out to her. She wrote a book. She actually wrote a book about Meriwether Lewis, who died on the trace. Okay. And to promote that book, she walked the trace because she wanted to experience what he experienced. But during the walk, she brought her father as her person who, like, I bring my mom. Mm-hmm. Well, this year I got like a team going. Yeah. Cause my mom's like, I ain't doing the whole month. She did the whole month last year. She's like, I'm not doing it this year. So, but I reached out to her and I said, so she ended up writing another book about her walk. And that was a bestseller. So she had a bestseller and then wrote a bestseller while she was going to promote the other book. Incredible story. But she brought her her dad, who was in his 80s. And the book talks about her experience and how that relationship and how that trip really helped her and her father really come together, but still having that daughter-father conflict. Yeah. It's a great book. And so I reached out to her. She on Instagram, and she called me. We had a nice hour-long conversation about this and that, and she encouraged me. But at the end, I was like, so do you have anything else for me? Because she gave me a lot of tips. Uh-huh. And she said, yeah, don't do it. Yeah. And so, and once again, I'm that guy, right? Yeah. I don't know about that. And so I said, okay, well, it's doable, right? I mean, she did it. Yeah. She's got it documented. I can, definitely play off of that. And so I went to sleep and I woke up and I told my wife, I'm going to start a nonprofit and I'm going to walk the Natchez Trace. And she said, go back to sleep. She gave me the pat and said, that's nice. Go back to sleep. And from then on, now you're going into January, February. And I'm like, well, when can I do this, right? Weather, start checking all these different things. I go into April's Autism Awareness Month. Perfect. I was like, perfect, right? And I started doing the math. How far do I have to walk? She did 15 miles a day, but she took Sundays off. So she did it about 33 days, 33 days, which was smart, but I wanted to be difficult. I was like, you know what? I'm not going to take a day off because I want to do it in less time. But when I started doing the research and looking at it, I was like, all right, we're going to do this, this, and this. And so a buddy of mine, Tim, I said, listen, I need somebody to pick me up and drop me off. That's one of the most difficult parts of this trip is finding somebody that's willing to do that. My mom's retired, and at the time, Tim worked at Starbucks. Yeah. So I was like, you sure you want to come with? He's like, yeah, I'll quit. So he just quit. He was like, yeah, he's like, this sounds like more fun. So he came with me year one. But we started planning it in my kitchen, staying up till 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, making my wife more angry. And she's like, are you really doing this? I mean, we had maps and we had everything. And I'm like, yeah. She goes, when? I said, April. She goes, okay, next April. This is February. Yeah. I said, no, this April coming up. Yeah. And she walked in the room, slammed the door. And so we're in there like two scientists mapping this thing out. I'm going to walk here, walk there, where we're going to stay. And we got it all figured out. And we left March 30th, was at 22. and we landed here in Natchez, and I'd never walked, and we did something cool. So the GPS told us to come down the Natchez Trace to get to Natchez.
Yeah.
But I said, I don't want to see it. I don't want to see it till I walk it. So we stayed off. We went all the way around.
Yeah.
And I remember that first moment when I started the walk. It was April 1st, and I was nervous, but I wasn't. I'm like, I'm not scared, right? But when that first car goes by you, I started having second. That first car went by. I'm like, wait a minute, that was pretty close, or pretty, it's like, and there's no shoulder, right? So it's like white line and the bushes, right? I call it the bushes.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's pretty intense. And then the next car comes. And after you get 2 or 3 going by you, it gets easier. I reference football. It's like you have butterflies in your stomach before a game. When you take that first hit, you're good. You're like, I'm good. You forget about everything after that. But so that leads up into year 1.
Okay.
And so I had set up some different types of people to do my 501, but I was going to do it on my own because it's very expensive if you use a law firm. But I looked into it and I'm like, if you mess this thing up, you can mess it up. Yeah. So we ended up getting a quote from a law firm that takes care of everything. And it was like $5,000. But I told Jamie, I was like, she's like, that's a lot. I said, but listen, if we're going to do this thing, we're going to do it right. And we're going to do it, by the book. And it's going to be 100% legit. I don't want to start filling in holes later. Because that's how you get in trouble. Exactly. You want to start this thing off with a law firm. They're on retainer for the life of the nonprofit. And I can call them a question. So you want to make sure, because nonprofits can get in trouble. Yeah. Right? So you need to make sure you got everything run. That's why I want to use a law firm. So that's where the goal was $5,000 the first year, and that's what we set off to do. Yeah.
And you hit it, or did you have to self-fund some of it?
We got close. Yeah, we did. It wasn't terrible, but once again, the obscurity, right? And I'm not a big social media influencer. Yeah. So to push this out was just Instagram and Facebook. So you can only reach so far. And a lot of people didn't know what it was. They're like, so what are you doing? Why are you doing it? Yeah. What does this mean? Kind of deal. So year 1 was a struggle financially, but I kind of knew that. So I self-funded it to get us through the walk and things like that. But a success as far as I made it back. And then there was some traction. I did get some news coverage. Yeah. A couple of newspapers and things like that. But when I got back, more and more people were, what is Jacob's Audible? What are y'all doing, and why are you doing it? So that summer we saved up enough money, did a couple of smaller fundraisers, and we finally got our articles and got our 501, and we got a federal, state, and everything. So Jacob's Audible was born in July of 2022.
Okay, so that kind of leads naturally into what was going to be my next question is sort of. What is Jacob's Audible?
So Jacob's Audible has, in the beginning, and this is something, just like anything else, it's continued to evolve. Yeah. But in the beginning, and what we noticed was resource-wise, not that there's enough, there'll never be enough. Yeah. Resource-wise, there's direction to go in with your kiddos, where there's, therapies, there's Vanderbilt, and then there's different things where the kiddos can be involved in different activities and things like that. But what we noticed was that there was nothing for the parents. There was no respite for the parents. There was nothing that was a community of parents to really come together and share their stories, share their pain. And that's what I noticed the most. So when I was trying to figure out, okay, I know I want to start a nonprofit, but you have to know your purpose. You have to have a purpose. Yeah. Even before you file your paperwork, you have to have a purpose.
I say with everything, clarity, focus, discipline.
Yeah. So I said, what we're going to do? We're going to, obviously we help kiddos, right? Kiddos are everything, but I said, we're going to help parents. And we're going to help parents, one, navigate the world of autism, right? And we need to recognize them first, because I think people, and I use my own situation, and that's why it's so great, because I can speak on it because I did it, and I know what happened to me.
Yeah, and I think that you being vulnerable and saying, I think that people respond whenever somebody says, I screwed this up. Like I didn't handle it well. You know, thank God my wife handled it better than me.
Absolutely.
And I think that makes you real, vulnerable. And I think that helps other people, you know, understand there's not really a playbook for this. You're going into it. It's not like, hey, feel this way.
Right. Yeah.
You know, so I think that your story and you being vulnerable helps today, but I think moving forward, it's going to help even more, the more people that hear it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I love that word. So, because that's when I do speak to men, I do speak to fathers, and that's the word I use.
Yeah.
Because men, we're not vulnerable.
No, we're not at all.
We're not built to be.
No, we're tough guys. Yeah.
Tough guys. We have all the answers, right? We fix things. Yeah. And that's what I learned about Jacob was, one, you can't fix autism. And I think that's one of the parts that in the beginning I struggled with because, you know, if your child's sick, you fix it, right? You make them better. If your kiddo scrapes his knee, put a Band-Aid on it, right? Yeah. Your kiddo has a bad nightmare, you curl up with them and you keep them safe.
That's right.
But with autism, you can't do that. And as a father, that's really difficult. And you can't fix it. You can't take it away from them. And you have to learn to be vulnerable. And that's when the crying and reconnecting with my wife in December really helped me grow because she told me it's okay that you feel this way. It's okay. But to Jacob's Audible, we knew that our story was not the norm. It was not, because we started doing our own research and started talking to more and more parents and a lot of single moms. Dad's unfortunately the first to jump. Yeah. And we see a lot of grandparents with the kid. A lot of parents will just, give it off to the grandparents because it's a unique situation. Yeah. But every situation is different. Mm-hmm. And that's what I think when I say recognize autism, and it's a dual definition, is we recognize parents because we want to hear them. We want to know they're being heard, and we also understand what you're going through. But we want other people to recognize that autism is not, it's one of those words that I think is overused and but also umbrella definition, right? Yeah. And we try to tell people that it's different from, I have a great friend who's an autistic adult. His name's Steven, incredible guy. And he taught me this when I first met with him. He said, Brad, if you've met someone with autism, then you've met someone with autism. It's unique to all of them. Mm-hmm. So you can't say, oh, I know what autism is. My friend's autistic. Exactly. It's not that way. Yeah. And it's not that way as far as people's living situations, their day-to-day lives, and what people go through. So when we started getting on these parent support group websites or Facebook pages, they're brutal. There's people on there crying out for help, suicidal, don't know what to do. Because a lot of people don't understand those early years, one, you're dealing with the emotions of my child's autistic. Yeah. That was enough for me. But then people don't realize, and I don't share a lot of this because there's so much, is Jacob didn't sleep for the first 2 years. Like a lot of autistic kiddos have trouble sleeping or staying asleep. Yeah. I'm talking about an hour or two a night. So we had a rotation of putting him to sleep. My wife, then me, then my mom, and we'd rotate out, go take a nap. So that was 2 years of no sleep, dealing with, Jacob, but still holding down jobs, holding down daily life and doing all those things. So that's where my heart really went into Jacob's Audible. I said, we need to get in here with the parents and uplift them. Yeah. We need to, and I tell them, you need to, the 3 R's is what I go by. When I speak to parents, speak to dads, I said, you need to reimagine your life because it's not what you think. It doesn't look like what you thought it was going to look like. Mm-hmm. But you also have to reinvent yourself. And that's what I did. I went from this Brad. I'm not the same Brad I was 3 years ago. Yeah. I'm not the same Brad I was 2 years ago. And I'm not the same Brad I was last year. Yeah. And I felt that on the walk today. Yeah. I'm not the same guy. But it's great. I love it because I reinvented myself. And then you have to re-energize because, just like typical kids, right? And that's what I try and tell them. Don't let that word wedge you. Yeah, and that's the thing that I want to stress too is, we've talked a lot about the negative emotions because it's a hard thing to deal with. And I'm speaking from not experience, but from working with a lot of the our autistic population here,
there's a beauty in it too. I mean, they're some of my favorite kids that I work with. I mean, they're just that, you know, I've got I've got a kid in my program right now. He's brilliant, man, and he's funny, and like we just joke with each other. And I mean, he's just such a smart kid, and I think that it's important to remove that stigma
Absolutely
on them, because it's different. But I don't know, somewhere along the way, I don't want to quote anybody because I can't remember where it came from, but somewhere along the way, you know, I try to learn, and it's easier said than done, but try not to label things as good or bad. It just is.
Yep. Absolutely.
And I think that this is one of those things that it's not bad. It's just, it is.
It's,
you know,
exactly.
God gave it. God provided, you know, Jacob to you, and you're going to make a great life out of, and he's going to have a great life.
Absolutely.
You know, he'll probably do some amazing things.
Oh yeah, he already does. Yeah.
He's
in just speaking from my personal experience, but to speak on what you just said, the joy that Jacob brings to me, and I have a comparison now. You know, Jackson's 2.5.
Yeah.
So I look at both situations. So everything Jackson does now, Jacob didn't do.
Yeah.
So Jacob, you know, Jack's talking, he's walking, he's just like I said, he's a world, man.
Yeah.
He cracks you up. He does all the mischievous things. He's just, you know, he's all boy.
Yeah.
And I love that. Jacob's a little more reserved, but Jacob is more coordinated and he's more strategic.
Yeah.
Right. And I love that about him. You know, he's very walk softly, but I'm watching everything, right? And he sees things. I mean, you can walk out of a room and hide something, and you think he doesn't see where you put it, and he does. But so the joy that I get, and this is what I tell parents is, you know, typical parents have trouble. I have cousins that have kids, right? And they're Jacob's age, and they're horrible. I'm like, I'll take Jacob over there, you know, and they're typical, right? I use the word typical.
Yeah.
And they're horrible. And I'm like, I don't think I want any of those. And so, I tell that story to parents. It's like, you know, Jacob's Jacob. But the joy I get when Jacob says, you know, he's starting to talk a little bit more and more.
Yeah.
And when he says a 3-word phrase, you know, I want cookies. Dad, I love you. It's funny, and he's very selective.
Yeah.
When he wants something, he talks. You know, but you can't walk up and say, hey, Jacob, how you doing? He'll look at you and just start walking away. But he's funny, and he's loving. He kisses, he hugs. But the joy I get when he does things is far more than when Jackson does something, right? Because it's expected. We expect it as parents. Okay, at 2, they're going to do this. 3, they're going to do this. 4, they're going to go to elementary school, and it's gone. But when Jacob makes a milestone or conquers something, the joy that I receive from that is just, it's beyond anything that I've ever experienced. So I tell people this could be the worst thing for you, but it could also be the greatest.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's something that I've learned, and I try to share that with parents. Now, granted, every situation is different. There's aggressive kiddos. There's kiddos that are very aggressive. But to go back to your friend, and I had a great conversation with someone, and you know, Jacob is autism, right? It's a state of self. Right? The root word of aut, O-U-T. It's a state of self is what it is. But I often wonder when I look in his eyes, and he's like I said, he's always laughing. He's a comedian. He likes, anytime you leave a beverage open, like a coffee or a cup or anything, he's going to find a little toy and he's going to dunk it. And I mean, I'm talking about as quick as you can walk away and come back. There's going to be like a little bluey figurine in there. He keeps them close by just for these opportunities. But what I tell people is, when we think Jacob is struggling, or we think things are, you know, wow, I wish he would do this, or wanted this, I wish he knew what this was. I often look at him and go, you know, he doesn't have a worry in the world. Yeah. Maybe we're the ones that have a problem. I think sometimes he looks at us and thinks we're weird. Yeah. Because in his world, he's great. Yeah. He doesn't have the worries. He doesn't have the concerns. He's fearless, which is not good sometimes, but he understands, but he's also in a great place. I mean, he is a joy. I mean, if he's not laughing and giggling, you know, he's getting upset because his brother took his toy, and, you know, just like typical kids would. So I look at that and I encourage other parents to see that inside of them. That's what Jacob's Audible does. We empower parents to understand the importance of getting over the stigma. And then also the key thing that we really, really, really focus on is respite. We tell the parents, you have to unplug. You got to unplug from the matrix and that's typical people, right? We got to take that vacation. We got to sit on the porch on Sunday afternoon.
When you say can't pour from an empty glass.
That's it. Yeah. And that's what one of the biggest things I say is, and this is where I got the idea for Jacob's Audible was, if we're the biggest advocates for our children. Okay. You have therapists, you have teachers, things like that, but the parents, we're our kiddos' biggest fans. Yeah. We're going to be their biggest advocates. But if you're not well mentally, physically, emotionally, you can't advocate for your child. And that's where it starts. I mean, they replicate who we are. And that's typical kids too, right? Well, where did he get that from? Well, he got it from his dad. Why? Because that's what his dad does. Because they watch, especially in that, first, 7 years, I think it is. I'm learning all this stuff about the brain. Yeah. And when kids' brains click and turn off and how, because as much as I didn't want to be like my dad, the good and the bad, right? Yeah. And I was like, all right, I love what he did here. He taught me a ton, but then I'm like, all right, I'm not going to do any of this, right? And as you get older, you're like, that's what you're like. I say things he says, I do, I and different things like that, and it's because it's embedded in you at such an early age, and it's the same thing with autistic kiddos, typical kiddos. So you need to make sure, because if you're angry, screaming, yelling, when these kiddos break down and have a meltdown, you have a meltdown with them, then that's how they're going to perceive this is what I'm supposed to do, kind of thing. So that's where the base of Jacob's Audible is. Now we've explored out, we've dug into doing some community events, and obviously the kiddos are involved, but I also invite a lot of parents that don't have kids with autism. It's about community. It's not about the autism community as much as it is the community. Yeah. Because I think it's important, and that's why when I walked the walk this year, obviously for awareness, right? But I named it recognition this year on purpose, because I think to recognize, one, the parents, but two, to have other people have a better recognition of what autism is. Yeah. And just like anything else, that when I spoke at a church last year, it was about 12 dads, but 75% of them had kiddos with Down syndrome. But I understood what that was. I understood, what that go. But we were all the same. Yeah. We all had the same struggles, the same everything. There was one dad that his daughter had a terminal illness, but when we shared our stories, they were all the same. Yeah. And that's what I want. Typical parents can be just as involved with autism parents, because the struggles can be the same, right? So, and if you come in with a different light and a different perspective, because isolation is doom and gloom for any person or any opportunity in life. If you're isolated,
none of us are meant to be isolated. And then to piggyback on what you're saying a second ago, and I think we got about 10 minutes. I'm gonna hit a couple of things fast at you, but that's my Louisiana coming out at you.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. But I think it's very important for parents and children who don't know that world to educate themselves more, because I think there's a lot of bullying. There's a lot of bullying in regular ed school. And I think whenever somebody's different, I think kids can be cruel. Adults can be cruel.
Absolutely.
So I think it's important that we educate ourselves. And I think it's important that we teach our children, hey, just because this person's not exactly like you doesn't mean anything. You treat these people, you treat these kids with respect, whether it's autism, whether it's Down syndrome, doesn't matter what it is. Whether they're just poor, if they're just different than you, doesn't matter, whether they're the nerd that's smarter than everybody, right? Which I was never that, but
me neither.
But I think it's super important to just educate everybody. So I agree with you. Trying to branch out, not just for those parents, but to educate parents and children of everybody.
Absolutely.
Real quick. So like I said, I think we got about 10 minutes left just to keep it consumable for everybody. But you said something a while ago that jumped out. I'm going to hit you with about 3 or 4 questions real quick. So we'll keep them brief. But you said the genetic testing at early on. So that didn't show anything. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah,
So,
it didn't. So we and
is that normal, or do you know that? Or is
I
that,
think so.
so it doesn't always show,
Right, because and once again, like there's a lot of myths, a lot of things that we won't understand about autism.
Yeah.
You know, if it's genetic code, is it a glitch in the brain wiring, or is it both?
So it's not something that just that simple test can tell you.
Right. So yeah, and it's one of those, and I think, and I'm not sure, and I should know this, but I'm not sure. I think it looks for severe flaws in the genetic makeup.
Okay.
Something that pops out, right?
Okay.
But we did it to find out the gender.
Okay.
That was my idea.
Yeah.
Well, my wife said, "Hey, we should do genetic." I think everyone should do it, right?
Yeah.
Because you, once again, early intervention, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
You
prepare yourself for, if you know, the more we know, the sooner we know, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if I told you you could have known this yesterday, would you want to know it? You're like, yes, I would know.
Yeah.
And so, but I was like, okay, yeah, absolutely, because I was a rookie, right?
Yeah.
Rookie, and she said, I said, what about gender? She's like, oh yeah, we can,
Yeah.
So we knew before we knew, right?
Yeah.
Before we got to the ultrasound portion, we found out it was a boy.
Yeah.
So that was just exciting for me. But so yeah, it came back clean. And like I said, I don't know the exact I think they look for, like I said, severe genetic, code that doesn't align.
And
But with autism, keep it brief, but with autism, you got, I call it a glitch, right? There's a lot of terminology there, but there's a glitch in the brain, but there could be a genetic makeup. But then, so you have parents that they'll have 3 kids, they're all autistic. But then you'll have parents that have 5 kids and the middle kid's autistic, but the rest of them aren't. So what is it, right? Because you figure if 2 parents are making children, if their codes are develop into autism, why does it happen every time?
Yeah.
And then you go down a rabbit hole of post birth, elements, right? I mean, a lot of people they'll discuss the immunization and things like that, and then there's foods, and like I said, that's for a different show. That's a different show. You can go down that.
Yeah.
But once again, I truly believe it's like I said, it's God's path. It's God's story. He's just
So I just want to recap the significance of the 444. That's the Natchez Trace, right?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
And so my first year that I walked it, knew it was 444 miles, and that's how I broke it down with the miles a day. But right the week before I left, a buddy of mine who runs Ironmans, he actually helped me understand that you have to have good shoes. You can't wear cotton socks. He's like, cotton slides. He's like, you'll blister up. So I didn't know what wool lycra was. I'm glad I do now, because that's what these guys wear. I
would have not known.
Yeah, I wear a sock sleeve so your toes are separated because you don't want your toes to rub. I put a sock over that. Wide box, toe box shoes. I mean, it's all this stuff that I wouldn't have known. But he runs Ironmans and does that stuff, triathlete. But he said this, right before I left, he goes, so, you're doing this for Jacob's Audible, but who are you? Yeah. I said, what do you, I'm Brad. I'm the executive director, founder. He's like, no, but you're doing this walk. You got to have a name. And I'm like, what do you mean a name? He's like, a name. I was like, and he just looks around. And he goes, the 444 guy. Yeah. And I'm like, that's stupid. I said, that doesn't even make sense. He goes, yes, it does. He goes, da-da-da. And I said, okay, fine. He goes, you got to get a hat. I said, what? It says the 444 guy? He goes, yeah, get a hat. He's like, you got to have something to brand yourself that you're doing this walk. Yeah. So I went to the mall. And the guy was like, well, that's going to look small, bunched up. I said, well, how about just put 3 4s on a hat? He's like, yeah, I'll do it. And so I had it was black, white in the back, Richardson trucker hat. Yeah. Had 3 4s on it. And I only made one just for me because I was like, Yeah. But as we got down the trace a little bit, people started seeing the hat. And they started, I want one. So now we've gotten this whole deal where we make several hats and different, every year, different brands, different styles. And we can't sell them, but people give us donations for them, and it's kind of taken off. So I have like 7 now. I got I got a friend that made me one. Yeah. So, but 444 guy. I'm still the 444 guy. Awesome. Yeah. So.
And then lastly, before we wrap up, how can people find it? How can people learn more? How can people give if they watch this and want to give? The website, Facebook, and all of that good stuff.
Absolutely. So the website is jacobsaudible.org.
Okay.
But if you put .com, I bought both domains, so it'll send you to the website.
I got you.
So Jacobs Audible with the S, so Jacobs with the S Audible. .org. Okay. And we also have an Instagram page. You can just look up Jacobs Audible, Facebook page, and we're not on TikTok or Twitter or anything like that. Yeah. So we keep it very simple. And yeah, so when you go to the website, there's you can support the walk specifically, or you can make a general donation right from the website.
Okay.
So that's something that I've worked on for 2 years.
Yeah.
Hopefully making it better and better, but it has a lot of information on there for people who need and want
to dig in.
Yeah, want to dig in. But there's also spaces on there where I have my personal cell phone number on the website. You could personally email me on the website, which I think is because we answer all the phone calls, we answer all the emails personally.
Yeah.
Very quickly for people who want to reach out. When I had a guy, he said, "Where do I send a check?" I was like, "Here you go."
Yeah.
Gave him the address right away. So just any response that they want to have, just the website is a great place to start.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I said that was the last question, but I did want to ask one more question before we get out. The name Jacobs Audible, I think we were talking on the phone, and it's kind of a football play.
It is. Yeah. It is. And I'm glad you asked that because I didn't put that in there.
Yeah.
So I'm a football guy, right? Played football in high school.
Who dat?
Who dat? Oh, yeah, always, yeah. And grew up. My dad had season tickets back before they were like $200 for season tickets back then. Grew up a big Saints fan, but played football. Just dug into it. I wish I knew then what I know now. Yeah. I can read defenses now. Back then I couldn't. So when I started thinking about Jacobs Audible and what we wanted to do, and what I came up with was I want people to change the way they look at it. I want them to change the way they see it, change everything about the stigmatism behind autism. Yeah. Because that's what I had to do. I had to change the way I looked at it, the way the world looked at it. And it's not a death sentence. It's not terrible. It's not. It is what it is. Yeah. Like you said.
Just is.
It just is. And so I'm like, change. I'm like, Audible. Yeah. Because I wanted a sports theme because it just always works out that way with me. There's some sports theme in there. So I'm like, Jacobs Audible. And our tagline is changing the play on autism.
I love it.
But it has a dual meaning and it's great. So the Audible is obviously in football. You get to the line, and what I look at is autism is the defense. Yeah. And when autism comes up to the line and you're running the same plays that aren't working, what do you have to do?
Change the play.
You come up to the line and you see that this play's not going to work.
Unless you're Les Miles, then you keep
You just keep, Well, that's a different show too, right? Yeah. He drives. So, but you get up, you have a run play called. They got 9 guys in the box. Yeah. What are you going to do? Well, we're going to audible. We're going to audible to a pass, and it's the same thing with autism. When autism comes up and it looks like it's undefeated undefeatable. Yeah. Or you can't get around it. That's when you change your play and you change it up here. Yeah. You change it in here. But the second reason is Jacobs Audible is because a high percentage of kiddos are nonverbal. Mm-hmm. So the audible part is audible means to hear and to listen. And so we want people to know that we're going to listen and we hear them. Wow. And that's the audible part. So it's kind of a dual meaning, but
I didn't know that whenever I asked the question.
Yeah. And so it's unique. It's very unique. People ask me a lot. They're like, audible, what is that? Yeah. So I love digging in the story because just like with the 4s, it starts a conversation. Yeah. And once you start a conversation, you can really open up people's hearts and their minds to what you're really trying to do. Yeah. So I love people when they ask me. I love it.
Well, man, I definitely appreciate you coming on. Is there anything else that you want to hit on that we might have missed or anything? Or
I think that's it. I just wanted to let everybody know that today's April 1st. Yeah. And I walked the first 15 miles today. Yeah. And if you want to follow along, I'd love that. Jacobs Audible, like I said, on Instagram and Facebook. Yeah, okay. We have a virtual walk that we're offering that you could sign up to do, and you can watch me walk up the trace. You can walk along with me. Okay. At home on your Peloton, in the park or whatever. You can bike, you can run if you want to. But then if you also want to follow, I do videos every day. I do different types of posts and let people know about the trace, about autism. And so my tag is the 444 guy.
Yeah.
So you'll find me under Brad Meshell, the 444 guy, Instagram, Facebook. I make it a lot of fun. It passes the time, of course, but I share the uniqueness of the walk and why we're out here. So I'd love to have people follow along. Yeah. You know, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get as many people. We want to inspire and uplift as many people as possible. Yeah. And if you follow along and you may come across something that you didn't know, or if you just want to have a few laughs and say, you know, this guy's wild out here, right? Yeah. Because I take videos while the cars are passing by. Yeah. People are like, that's really close. I'm like, yeah, I know.
Well, hopefully, you know, Ryan introduced us, and this is your third time to do it now.
Yeah, this is year 3.
So hopefully this is something that when you come back next year, you'll have more people in Natchez, and maybe the community here will become a part of this. Who knows? Yeah. I don't know where it goes. Yeah, I'm not going to try to force anything in the universe.
No, but that's our goal. I mean, our goal is to build relationships in the community in each different part, because even though we're a Nashville-based organization, you know, I'll go anywhere. Yeah. You know, my reach is as far as anyone will let me go. Yeah. I mean, I drove to Vicksburg 3 or 4 months ago to speak for 2 hours and drove home. 6-hour drive. Yeah. And I'll do it tomorrow. Yeah. You know, I'll go to Oklahoma tomorrow. And it's just one of those things where, you know, I want people to know that, you know, we're here for you, you know, and like I said, inspire, uplift. Don't be afraid to reach out. It's important, but I'm gonna do it as long as my legs let me. And, you know, and I'm hoping to, if anybody's out there, we're looking to hopefully do like a documentary. Yeah. 1 year. Yeah. Maybe I had a couple people reach out to me, not for this year, but next year. Yeah. And maybe something we could pitch to Netflix or something like that. We don't, you know, who knows? Who knows? Yeah. Right. And then, like I said, make more of an impact, more of a difference. Because autism is growing. Yeah. I almost, and I don't like using this word, but when the numbers continue to rise the way that they're rising, I mean, it's almost like a pandemic. And but the numbers are rising and the resources are lowered, right? So just like a lot of things, it's just not autism.
It's common people that's going to have to step up and help. Right. Help patch the holes in the boat.
Absolutely. And that goes for a lot of things, right? I mean, everything is underserved. Yeah. Exactly. Unfortunately, but autism is on its way. It's on the rise, and we're going to have to, like I said, community is our big word. Yeah. We're going to have to, just like in life, right? We're made to help each other. We're made to not do things alone. So, and we're made to help one another. Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, man, I definitely appreciate it, and I appreciate you guys watching this. Look, like I said, get involved. Check out the website. By the time this comes out, we will have already had our walk, but hopefully a lot of people come out to our walk on the bluff tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And maybe our walk here is something that we can do every year in conjunction with what you're doing and grow our awareness here in Natchez bigger and bigger. Absolutely. Not only Natchez, but throughout the Miss Lou. So I want to thank everybody for watching this. Thank you for your time, as always. We love doing these interviews, and we love that you guys keep watching them. Thank you to all of our partners, including Hampton Inn and Suites here, who is doing a renovation, and you got to stay in one of the new rooms.
I did. I'm on the penthouse floor.
That's right.
And it's they got that new car smell to the room. So yeah, it's fantastic. We got a river view. It's amazing. We love Natchez, and we consider this family now. Yeah.
So thank you to Hampton Inn and Suites. The renovations will be done here pretty soon. So thank you to all of our awesome partners that you see on the screen right now. God bless everybody out there. And as always, have a champion day. Hey guys, Ronnie and Shannon here with Miss Lou Champion Spotlight.
And we're here at our amazing partners, Gregg Veterinary Hospital.
Gregg Veterinary Hospital has been providing comprehensive, reliable, cutting-edge veterinary services to pets in the Miss Lou since 2002.
They welcome pets of all shapes and sizes who are in need of emergency treatment or who require routine medical, surgical, and dental care.
Dr. Gregg and his team offer a long list of services, including in-house laboratory diagnostics, digital x-ray, soft tissue, orthopedic surgery, dental care, extractions, laser surgery, laser therapy, preventative health, and wellness plans.
And if you need grooming and boarding services, they do that too.
So call Gregg Vet today. Hey guys, Ronnie and Shannon here with Miss Lou Champion Spotlight.
And we want to tell you about our amazing partners, Concordia Bank and Trust Company.
There's a reason Concordia Bank has been serving the Miss Lou since 1903. The staff is friendly and professional, and they always invest in the latest technology to best serve you. And remember,
Concordia Bank is on your side. Hey y'all, it's Ronnie and Shannon with Miss Lou Champion Spotlight.
And we want to take a minute to tell you about our awesome partners, Miss Lou Family Dentistry.
They have a professional, friendly staff, and they always have the latest technology to take care of you and your family. Miss Lou Family Dentistry has 3 locations here in the Miss Lou.
So schedule your appointment today to go visit the champion team at Miss Lou Family Dentistry.
Hi, it's Shannon with Miss Lou Champion Spotlight. If you like what we're doing, be sure to follow, like, share, and even comment on all our content. Also, visit MissLouChampions.com to sign up for our newsletter and to receive other information, as well as the opportunity to receive some awesome prizes. Thank you, Miss Lou, for your continued support, and as always, have a champion day. Hey y'all, it's Ronnie and Shannon with Miss Lou Champion Spotlight.
And we want to tell you about our awesome partner, Hicks Distributing Company, also known as Hicks Chicks.
Hicks Chicks is a local, family-owned food distribution company that has been serving the Miss Lou since 1945. You already know they serve all of your favorite restaurants, but did you know that they are also open to the public?
Hicks Chicks has a variety of food products, including delicious heat and eat options like chicken and dumplings, white bean chicken chili, lasagna, and gumbo. They also carry a wide variety of seafood options like shrimp, crabs, tuna steaks, salmon, and catfish.
And don't forget about their delicious burgers that are already pattied up for you, and their amazing dessert options.
So stop by today at 1380 Martin Luther King Jr. Road in Natchez. Hicks Chicks.
Way more than just chicken.